What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and this is the Early Bird Artcast once again. And it's going to be, I think, another Sunday fun day. Who knows? Maybe we'll trip over a topic here or there. But we got Mr. Peter Palmiotti and Russ Leach, Comic Book BlackBelt. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm good. Sitting here doing my thing. It's Sunday. It's work day.
Is it Father's Day over in the UK for you guys? You guys do the same thing? Or?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my son, who's back from university now, and we were just packing a load of stuff away. I actually had a day off yesterday from working, which was great.
Wow.
And in that day, I had to go where my study is. I've got a loft or an attic, you might say, where I store stuff, and I had to go and effectively board another attic above my kitchen.
Oh wow!
To find room to put some of his stuff, because he's probably going to be with us for a little while he sorts his life out, which is great. So he bought me some chocolate and a box of biscuits. So it's
nice.
Father's
Day, I'm moving in.
My daughter's out working with. She said Happy Father's Day to me this morning, and she's out working with my wife at the moment. So.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Well, Happy Father's Day, man, and Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there, and even the cat daddies.
Like cat daddies. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. We should talk about the fathers of comic books.
Yeah, good call.
The founding fathers of comic books. I mean, Russ, you're really hugely inspired by one of the big ones. Well, probably a lot of the big ones, but you know, there's one you tend to cite a lot.
John Buscema is my he's the pinnacle for me. It took me a while to appreciate a lot of the other artists. I just had to mature a bit, I think. But I look back at a lot of the Bronze Age artists, and they're all superb. But there was something, I think, just a little bit special about John. So,
yeah, no doubt. It's weird because, like, growing up, he was growing up kind of in the late 80s, early 90s when there was so many like crazy styles, and I was just like to me, John, people like from that era were just like kind of boring to me. And luckily my tastes changed since then. They've matured. I still like all the crazy styles that have horrible anatomy and stuff, but but I also have a huge appreciation for John Buscema. And to be honest, I didn't totally like hate on him. Like I kind of hated on Kirby for a while, but like now I freaking love Kirby. But I didn't totally hate on Buscema because I mean, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way was like literally what taught me how to draw, like just draw, period.
Well, exactly. It's a brilliant book.
Yeah. I mean, and talk about like coming around to like something like, I mean, the fact that you're able to work on this drawing the Marvel Way or however that is titled is like, that's just got to be so cool. Like,
oh, it's I know it's only in the UK and Europe, so it doesn't really get much of a fanfare, to be brutally honest with you. I'm not well known at all for it, but right. it is a real honor to be working on it, to have something that that is similar in aspect, as it were, the focus of drawing the Marvel Way. I've got my book here. I use this book all the time. It's a fantastic book.
Oh yeah, mine's right next to me too.
Yeah. And to be able to do something that I've looked at. I mean, I've looked at that book so many times, and to be involved in something like Draw the Marvel Way is it's a bit special. So I'm very pleased to have done it. And much like yourself, it's funny because you talk about liking all those mad styles from like I suppose from the 90s and what have you onwards, and yet disliking Kirby. And now you look at, I mean, there's obviously those similarities between Kirby and those mad styles, because
Yeah.
Kirby was all about exaggeration. And I've said this before, being young, being arrogant, and being immature, it took me a long time to appreciate people like Kirby, and Kirby actually coming to love Kirby's art, which I do, has actually helped me appreciate so many different styles in comic books, and not worry quite so much about
Interesting.
the correctness of things and more about the style and the impact and the excitement of things. So it's kind of it's a bit of a round journey, I suppose.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of funny too. Like you can, if you really look at it, like you can pick out most comics, even if they're done by people who are more focused on getting things correct, and you can find in imperfections, you know, even
Oh,
in that.
yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, none of us are like, you know, we're 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 all just trying to make a story, you know, when it comes
Yeah.
down to it.
But that trying to hit that perfection is obviously an artist's thing.
Hmm.
And perfection isn't necessarily somebody's view of perfection as in, oh well, everything must look exactly like it looks in real life. That's not the point. And it's, for me, it was an immature way of seeing the world and seeing art in general. I'm still not the greatest fan of installation art, but as far as mixing up styles and ways of viewing things from a pictorial perspective, like comics and painting and what have you, I really have grown up an awful lot. And it, to the point now that I look at my own art and try. I'm not suggesting that I do things perfectly, but trying not to spend too much time to reach perfection, and use those shortcuts that you have in comic book art, and make your work as dynamic as possible. Because if you're reaching for perfection, you start to stilt the art. I think it was David Lloyd said that you do a sketch for a cover, and it's just a very loose sketch, and by the time you've got to the ink process, you've probably lost 50% of the dynamism of the original sketch that you did.
Right.
So it's important to exaggerate as much as possible, and that's something you can't do if you're obsessed with perfection. You've got to think, no, I've got to create a feel. I suppose it's the difference between impressionists and I suppose like Michelangelo's work. He was looking for perfection, wasn't he? He was looking to depict the exact human body, and yet impressionists were looking to create a feel, to get you to get the aura of people and places. And I think it's like that with comic books. You want to have a really good mix of the two, somewhere in between, and get energy across, because that's how you tell a story. You can't tell story if the way that you're working is very static.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that actually is kind of appropriate to kind of this whole Father's Day thing, because we're kind of talking about this whole, um, you know, it's funny, you grow up, you get, and you kind of start, usually it seems like when you're a teenager or something, you start to get like all these kind of idealized views.
Hmm.
And it seems like, at least for me, you know, I feel like I saw things a lot more in black and white when I was younger, and now I see all the shades of gray, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what you try and tell your kids. That's what I try and tell my kids, is that the world isn't black and white. Compromise is something that helps. It's important to see other people's point of view, even if you never agree with them. And certainly, it's like that with art. You have to appreciate it, even if you don't like it.
Absolutely. What would you say are the?
I know.
Go ahead, Peter. I was just
Uh,
about to flip it over to you,
I,
anyways.
I know with me, it's like definitely, getting in the trenches myself, making comics, working on comics, has given me a greater appreciation of everybody before me.
Mm.
You know, just the sheer amount of work that goes into it. Because you look at a comic and it takes you 2-3 minutes to read, and it's like, oh, that looks easy. But after working on comic after comic, you really, your appreciation definitely grows about all the work that goes into it, all the stuff you don't see that's happening behind the scenes, with the creators and everything.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then, probably out of all of us here, you've probably met, a lot more of these guys than probably the two of us. I can't really speak for Russ, but I would imagine. How is it like, kind of uh, being able to meet some of your kind of heroes in the industry while also
Uh,
trying to work yourself?
yeah. I mean, it's so great. The first artist I met was in this like little dive hotel like basement in the outskirts of Brooklyn, like near the water.
Yep.
And it was dark, and it was like just a wide open basement that they had, people selling comics all along the sides of it, but like almost directly in the middle was this guy George Perez, just like sketching away, and he
Oh,
had a few comics he worked on, and
George
it
Perez.
was just
Well,
like nonchalant.
he is a genius.
Yeah, it was so great. I mean, I was with Jimmy, and we went up to him, and I was much younger and shy and just happy to be there. But
Yeah,
Jimmy just like got into George and like said hello, and really love your work, and they just chatted for a half hour or so. It was like nobody else like was there to see an artist who made comics, but so we had a great opportunity to just go up to him and talk to him for a really long time, and he was so kind and so sweet.
that's awesome. That's really cool. Did you ever get to kind of learn from some of your heroes, like on a personal level?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's like every encounter leaves little trail of seeds of lessons,
Hmm.
um, whether it be directly with the art or just the working in the industry, working with publishers, working with editors. All their experience comes out as stories, and it's definitely insightful and things you wouldn't normally think of. Like my brother, for all the people I know in the industry, my brother knows everybody. And
Right.
the funny thing is, like one of our like we were both into Killer Raven way back when Marvel published, um, and the artist is Craig Russell, and both huge fans of his work. I had some independent comic he did himself from years back, and I was part of a project for I forget the title of it now, but it was like for Army that had been through the Desert Storm or something to that extent. And I worked on, I inked some pages for that book, and one of the people that worked on it was Craig Russell, and he did a series of 4 or 6 sort of pinups that were in it, And so my friend who put the book together said, "Oh, I got these this artwork from Craig Russell, and I gotta bring it to him at his house. Would you like to go?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" And it's actually the only artist I met first that my brother didn't meet in my whole career. It's like, because he always met everybody first. And
Yeah.
it's like, here, finally, I met somebody he didn't meet. It was so good.
That's funny. It's funny. It kind of reminds me a little bit too of, you hear, I don't know how much you guys have dug into like some of the history of some of these guys and whatnot, but one thing I've noticed is like I've spent a lot of time like checking out stuff about Kirby and stuff, and I mean he would just have kids over like his house to watching him like draw like aspiring comic creators, and they'd just sit there and like ask him questions and eat sandwiches and like like imagine that, like that must have been like the coolest thing ever,
It was the Wild
All
West
right.
back then. It was it was a different time. He was apparently he was very generous like that, and he was a really nice guy, generous of his time and his artwork as well. I think he gave away a few bits and pieces that were returned because they shouldn't have been given away. But yeah, it was a different time. I mean, making comics back then, you didn't have the TV in the same way, and cinema was limited. Like now, you've got releases. You've got 2 or 3 massive releases every month, haven't you? You used to have to wait a little while for films to come out back then, and comics were a visual way. You didn't have to read from a kid's perspective, definitely, but for everyone, you didn't have to read a novel, like a 500-page novel or a 250-page novel. You could sit down and read 25 pages of floppy pulp, and that was what comics were. They were pulp. They were great fun. That's why they became collectible, because they were so easy to throw away, and that's why the guys drew, back then drew so many pages, because they had to make money. And it was just a different world. It really was. It's a world I wish I'd been part of, I have to say. That whole age of, it was a golden age, wasn't it? Not just literally the golden age of comics, but it was a golden age the whole time, right up until probably mid-90s. It was just what a time to have been involved in making comics and making publishing houses and coming up with characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
They were,
oh, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, like, there were drawbacks, like the page rate wasn't nothing, and they didn't get artwork back then.
Page rates aren't so great now.
yeah. But I mean, back then they were nothing from what I've heard. So to really make a living, Kirby had to work on like 3 books a month or something.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Like, I think what we're partially talking about too is like the legacy of comics, and the thing is it has been like this thing that's been handed down even from the beginning. And honestly, I think that spirit is still alive now. We have obviously this weird, world of Twitter and controversy and drama and whatnot. But I was watching one of the, what is it, that guy Billy Tucci or whatever. I was
he's great.
To one of his videos, and he was talking about like how he got kind of confronted with all this drama and stuff, and then he went to all his buddies who are like in the actual industry, and he's like, do you guys really have like issues with these people? Like, is this really an issue in the industry? And he's like, most of the people in the actual industry, like, they don't really care that much about all this stuff. Like, they're still like a really cool bunch of people helping each other out and wanting to help promote people. Like, it's not like Twitter, something that and forgive me, people who don't like some of these people, but like so some one thing that Doug Tenapola has said in the past that I've noticed is you know Twitter isn't real. Like that's not real people. Like that's not real life. That's like people hiding behind an avatar screaming at the world, and it's not even a lot of people sometimes. Like it's just they're loud about it, and unfortunately it does have consequences. But the thing is the legacy of comics has always been this kind of like, I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, we're helping each other out, because when it comes down to it, the artists are really just trying to make some cool stuff, and the businesses are trying to sell that stuff, and so I think that a lot of times the artists and writers kind of stick together a little bit and try to teach each other, even from the beginning, like the early days when comics like literally first started to become a medium. They were all like stealing from each other. That's why a lot of that stuff looks very similar. They were all learning how does comics even work? Like, what is the language of, like, oh, you can use thought balloons or thought bubbles, or oh, look at this guy, he used a caption box, like, oh, how do we put these balloons in here, and like all this stuff, like, how do you even arrange a page? And people would just kind of liberally steal from each other, and it was a community. It was almost like a community project,
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
then
you're
ever
absolutely
since,
right.
these traditions ever since have been like handed down,
Yeah, I think people get. I think there's a lot of people commenting on things like comics who aren't necessarily involved in comics,
Mm.
and like to make a lot of comments about them and believe that stories should go a certain way and do a certain thing, and without getting involved in that whole mire that you're alluding to. But there's room for everybody in comics. There's room for everything, and people should stop worrying about what somebody else is doing as far as not liking it. If you don't like it, don't look at it, don't read it, don't switch it off. Do make something. Don't be a critic all the time. Be a creator. Do something. And
Absolutely.
that's exactly what you guys are doing. It's why it's so admirable and so impressive. So you're just getting on with it, That's
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
And that's the thing too, is like, I feel like the people who aren't getting all involved in the crazy drama, like, I mean, even the people who are getting involved, like, when it comes down to it, a lot of them are just people, and they're just like trying to make cool comics still.
Mm,
And the thing is I think we're getting to a point where it's like, let's kind of preserve the legacy of this medium. Like, let's just keep doing it, the way it's been handed down to us. I mean, we're moving, we're learning, we're getting, new techniques and stuff, but at the same time, we're kind of preserving a really awesome heritage and legacy.
yeah.
And there's no reason why we can't just continue. And that's why I don't like. I almost don't even want to know if you were Comicsgate or SJW, or, and even if I
No.
do know, I just don't care. Like, I just want to make cool comics. I'll make comics. I'll make SJW comics, whatever. Like, I mean, I don't know. There's certain themes that I might not be into, but like, I'm cool with you if you make your comics, as long as you just make a cool, awesome story. Like, do it.
Yeah.
More power to you. I'll work with you. I don't care what your politics are. Like, let's just
That's
make comics.
that's exactly it. And that's what's being lost at the moment, because everybody wants to scream at each other, instead of just getting on. It's not good. People need to just calm down, relax, and if you're there to create and entertain, then entertain, and if you're not, then just enjoy the ride. It's, no,
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that 100%. Don't want to know about people's. I'm sure there'll be people watching this that I won't agree with, on many things, but that doesn't mean that we can't sit down and have a discussion about stuff or entertain each other with the stories that we might write or produce. It's, the human condition is about working together. It's about us all being human. It's not about being in a different tribe.
Yeah.
So just get on.
Yeah, I was actually just talking about that to a friend of mine yesterday, actually, and you know, it's so true. Like people were meant to be around each other. Like we
Mm,
were meant to help each other out. You know,
yeah.
and there's no reason why we can't find common ground. I mean, what you know, I think when you start talking to somebody, whether it's online or in real life, you know, your goal should never be to be like, well, how can I size this person up and figure out what they're really all about, and like, you know, then I can make a judgment whether I want to be friends with them or not. It shouldn't be that. It's like, to me, my goal in every situation like that is what common ground can we find, you know, and let's
Hmm.
work off of that.
No, definitely. Yeah. Let's all just get on now.
um,
You're always going
so
to
let's,
have
oh,
some
go ahead.
people that are just too offensive to work with or too offensive to talk to. But you know, none of us are the thought police. If people want to be like that, then they're going to be like that. You just walk away and let them deal with their own karma.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is if somebody's going to be difficult to work with, and somebody you need to kind of stay away from or whatever, you know, let that be, you know, kind of a surprise, or not even just that, you know, of course you're going to look out for stuff, but you're not going to go in, you know, trying to judge the situation from the start, you know, go in
Mm.
with an optimistic view and, you know, always be careful, but, you know, and if you encounter that, then you can respond to it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So we got the chat going here. We got James in the chat. How's it going? How's everybody doing today in the chat? Ronnie Gunter is in here. How you doing, man? Can't stay long. Glad you popped in, man. We got Yanimal, which Yanimal needs to make his great return to these live streams. It's been a while. But yeah, how you doing, man? He said I had that too, but then John Buscema did the first Wolverine
Yeah.
standalone series, which was great, and I slowly discovered Conan. So
Yeah,
yeah,
fantastic work. All of it, just beautiful. And every inker that worked with Buscema was, you know, like I say, I'd Sinnott and Palmer are the ones that stand out. But just his work was just so. You were mentioning something before about the people that we're kind of carrying on the legacy,
hmm
and yeah, I like to use the term "standing on the shoulders of giants"
yeah,
because
true.
I think that's what we are doing, really.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. I was actually, I don't know if you were checking out my videos when I did this, Russ, or not, but there was not couple months back, more or less, I was doing an episode called the Mount Rushmore of comics,
Right.
and I was trying to see what would be the four, you know, creators that
Ooh.
would be on that mountain, and we had a fun discussion about that, and I kind of wanted to draw that, but you know, I don't know, I never ended up doing it.
That would be kind of tricky, wouldn't it? Because it would have to include. It would be difficult to include someone like John Buscema, for instance,
Yeah,
because that's a very personal opinion.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it would have to be people like Stan Lee, obviously Kirby. I think those two would have to be up there. But then,
yeah.
would you put in people like Bob Kane
Yeah, it's a
because
tricky
he
one.
produced such an amazing character so early on that stood the test of time?
Yeah.
But was he really an architect for comics?
Yeah, yeah. I
I'll go
mean,
back and check that video out, by the way.
I forget what the and I'll put a link in the description, and maybe I'll even
Cool.
post it on the end cards or something. But you know, I forget what I came to eventually, but I know, you know, Stanley. It was right after Stanley died, so that's why we were
Right.
having this discussion. And you know, I was like, Stanley's got to be on there. I mean, you just
Yeah.
can't not have him on there, even though, you know, some people would argue who created what. It doesn't matter. His contribution to comics as an advocate, just alone as an advocate of
Mm.
comics, is, you know, priceless. So, and then Kirby, obviously, like you can't not put Kirby even, and
No.
it's tough because you have, those two work together. So it's almost like, oh, that's kind of messed up. But I mean, Kirby just did so much even apart from Stanley. So it's like you really got to put Kirby in there,
You have to. Yeah.
and his influence. So then, we were thinking about all the different people, and I had to go. I felt like it was important to go further back, like to the beginnings, and Bob Kane was in the discussion, but even like the guys who created like Superman and stuff, like, but they kind of contributed. It's hard to not include them, but it's hard to include them because they kind of contributed one thing, but it was a very important one thing. I mean, Superman is literally like
He is
that's what made
comics.
the superhero. Like, so like I don't know, how do you get away from that? But at the same time, I was thinking about guys like Will Eisner.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
what's the guy? That guy who basically was probably the biggest impetus to manga comics. Like he's really important too. I can't remember what his name is. But like we had to think like, oh, do we just stick with American? And so I don't know. It was an interesting discussion. Definitely worth checking out if you guys want to check that out. I'll definitely, like I said, I'll throw a link in there. We got Larry Lonsby here. How you doing, man? James says another father of comics, Scott McCloud. Lots of aha moments from reading his books. I'll be honest. My only understanding of Scott McCloud is from his like understanding comics and all that kind of stuff. That's like all I really know of him. I haven't read any of his actual comics, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about Mr. Scott? You guys still there?
Yeah. I'm here. I don't know the name that well.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. All right. Well, I think his contribution to comics is huge, though. Like, obviously, I mean, he's gone into detail on teaching the craft of comics in a way that nobody really did up to that point. He really mapped it out pretty good. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, he's definitely somebody to look up to. He's definitely somebody who is important, in the realm of comics, in the legacy for sure. So yeah, it's a good point, James. Daniel Ebert's in here. How you doing, man? Let's see. Daniel's watercoloring a page. That's awesome, man. I love watercolor in comics. It's not used too commonly, but it seems to have been used more and more these days. I know Descender is kind of a big one that's been using watercolors. I was reading that for a little while. James is working on a huge Avengers piece. Cool, man. I'd love to check that out when you're done. James is a really good artist. Larry, yeah, Division instead of just making fun stuff. Yeah, man. Speaking about fun stuff, I watched a really fun movie last night. um, I really loved this movie, and I don't know, critically it got destroyed, but I thought it was a great movie. X-Men Apocalypse. I never there's for the first time I saw it, and I was just I couldn't see why anybody would have problems outside of probably inconsistencies within the movie franchise, and comparing it to comics and stuff. For sure that kind of stuff was there, but I just thought it was nothing but a really fun ride.
Yeah, I the first time I watched it, I enjoyed it. Like I was saying earlier to you on Facebook, that was Shallow Me, which just enjoyed the spectacle of the film.
Mhm.
And I after I heard some critiques of the film, I went back and watched it again, and didn't allow myself to get sucked in by just the visuals and the action, and found myself agreeing with the critiques. And then I kind of went, oh no, that's kind of ruined the film for me. So I have to I have to wait a while and then watch it again when I've forgotten all the critiques, so I can just be shallow me again.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, as a standalone film, I thought it was a solid story. I'm not sure what the critiques are. I probably will look into it because I do actually dig checking that kind of stuff out. But I know how that goes, though. I've had movies I've really liked be ruined by critiques, and sometimes I stay away from it just because I want to keep that enjoyment, But I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Daniel says, "I'm done now. It has to dry and see how the final result color wise." Yeah, that's the problem. That's the only thing with watercolors or traditional painting is you kind of have to wait for it to dry. And I don't know. You can kind of work out a process though. That's you can either work on two paintings at a time, or sometimes it's good to have the little break or whatever. But I love the medium of watercolors. I enjoy using it. I just never was able to afford the good stuff. And with watercolor, the medium of watercolors, the quality of material you're using, whether it's paper or paint or brushes, even, actually really does matter a lot. So you can do certain things with good quality stuff that you can't do with the bad quality stuff. I've found. So Tim is in here. How you doing, man? I just hope that this crowdfunding does not get a bad name from people not following through with their projects and just running with the money. Yeah, man. I mean, it's already happened in the history
Yeah.
of crowdfunding, and I think that luckily it hasn't happened maybe enough to stop people. I guess if it started to become more like 25% or something, somewhere around there where people were doing that, then I feel like then people would be like, well, it's really risky to try to contribute, but I don't think it's anywhere near that yet.
I think it happened a lot a short time ago before the crowdfunding boom, if you want to call it, started to happen, because it has to be said, no matter what you think of Comicsgate or whatever's been going on in all the drama that's been going on in the comics industry, certainly the side effect of all of this has been that there's been a whole bunch of indie creators getting their stuff out there on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. And I had heard stories of several fairly high profile creators, just not including Rob Liefeld, actually, not coming up with the goods and still being sort of years into projects that they've taken money for and not provided the goods for. I personally, I could never do that. That doesn't come into my purview, as it were, of the way that I run my life. If I were to take the money for something, then I need to provide that, as I need to provide those goods or those services or that product. If I've taken the money, I'm paid, I need to provide it. And you need to think long and hard about your budgets before you ask for money through a crowdfunder, to make sure that you're going to deliver that product. So I don't think that it's quite the same place that it was prior to the explosion that we've seen over the last 18 months, because there's more of a focus on it. People are watching it more. It's become more of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beyond.
Go ahead, Peter. You still there?
Oh, Peter.
Peter.
You hear me?
Yeah.
There he is.
You hear me now? Okay. Jesus, I don't know what's wrong with my thing. Yeah, I mean, Kickstarter has been around 10 years, and I would say definitely like after the first year, this kind of stuff came up. It's, it's not even a question, really, right now, currently. I mean, there are creators, most of the creators deliver, because, then Kickstarter would have been shut down years ago. But there's the case, and actually, it's like I have a friend of mine who did a collection of his comic and still hasn't delivered. And I actually forgot about it. Somebody reminded me recently, and meanwhile he's trotting around the world. But I understand like the whole business of it. Like, you know, it's like nobody sees everything that goes on behind the scenes. There's reasons for everything. As long as they're keeping in touch with the people who pledged, then it's, you know, it's not really a big issue. It's like, number one, you're supporting. That's first and foremost. Um, and you know, it's like, it's because we're not Marvel, we're not DC. You know, we're going to hit bumps, we're going to hit things along the way. If you, as long as you keep that communication line open, um, then I think it's best. Yeah, obviously, you know, you want to deliver, and it, you know, for me, because I recently did this, it's like I'm going to do whatever it takes. Like if my calculations were wrong, it doesn't matter. It's like I'm going to deliver. Um, if it's going to cost me more for printing by the time I get to printing, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm going to make it happen. You know, it's like money will come out of my pocket. I don't care. It's like, because I did this Kickstarter, and that's my promise to my fans, and I'm going to deliver.
But
You know, that's
because,
how I see it.
sorry, Peter, that's because
Yeah.
you're a professional. And
Yeah.
and you don't, and when I say professional, that doesn't mean that, oh, you've worked for the big two. It's because of the way
Right.
that it's the way that you approach not only your art but also your business and your professionalism. And you
Yeah.
are an honest, decent professional that will do what they say they're going to do. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people out there that will take the money and then the book will never show up. And I don't think we're in as much danger of that happening as we have been in the past, simply because of the focus on crowdfunding that there currently is. So, but we all know what we'll get from you, Pete. We'll get a bloody brilliant book. So,
Well, you know, it's years of making mistakes that has gotten me here. I still owe things out. I still, you know, but I'll come through. It's like, you know, it's a difficult business, and things happen, things sidetrack you, life gets in your way, yada yada yada. But you know, it's like, I'm glad I made 1,000 mistakes, because it's gotten me where I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think there is, you know, some wiggle room, and I'm glad you brought that up, Peter. You know, uh, there is definitely, you know, kind of some understanding that comes with the fact that yes, you're not one of the big two, and you know, you're trying to do your thing, and I think you hit on the right thing. Is, are you still communicating, or are you, you know, ignoring this thing, and actually you have taken advantage of people? There's kind of a big difference. But if you're still going to deliver, but you're just coming into some hardships, maybe you miscalculated the shipping or whatever, which has definitely happened in previous Kickstarters, well, there's a little bit more forgiveness for that. But when it does come all down to it, it is really important that we deliver on those things. You know, when you don't deliver, you've just betrayed the trust of the people you're trying to, you know, work with, and the people that you're trying to build a career, the fans, all that stuff. Like, you've betrayed the trust, and any kind of business or brand is number one, head over heels built on trust. And if you betray that, you kind of lose your ground, you know.
Yeah. You know, I was part of a Kickstarter that went south. It was a book me and Barry Barry McLean. Am I saying it right? Me and my friend Barry worked on um, End of Days.
Yeah,
If you remember, Marshall.
yeah,
And I was really excited about that project, and so was Barry. But the writer, I think was going through some life challenges,
Mm-hmm.
but then he totally, utterly disappeared from the internet. And, me and Barry were sort of left holding the bag. It's like, we worked on it for as much script as we got, and, we did get paid for what we did. But that's not the point. The writer disappeared and didn't deliver, and I felt really bad about it for a long time. But I've friends have told me over and over, it's like there's nothing people expect you to do.
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
just the anchor on the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't your fault. That's the whole point. Is
Yeah.
that the writer has, for whatever reason, and please take this without it seeming harsh, but they flaked out.
Right.
That
Yeah.
they're the person that, for whatever reason, they may have a totally valid reason, a personal reason that they've messed up. But then if they've disappeared forever, then they do need to explain themselves to people that have paid money.
Mm-hmm.
And communicate. You're absolutely right. Communication. It's amazing how much people, especially within the comics industry, and fans of comics and fans of art, will understand as long as you communicate to them. You're absolutely right, Peter. If communication is a key, and people will appreciate it and they will support.
Yeah. Yeah. I pretty much totally agree. It's the person who is the one who's kind of in charge of the project. It's really, when it comes down to it, it's up to them. And a lot of the times that does end up being the writer with indie projects, because they write the story and then they try to find the talent to help them. And it's unfortunate because Peter, you and Barry are both very hardworking individuals, who are happy to do your part and get excited about the stuff. And I mean, I love watching Barry do what he's doing. Like, he is just knocking pages out like crazy, and he's luckily he's been able to move forward with that and not be tarnished. And I think the same can be said for you, Peter. Obviously, you just did a Kickstarter that was successful, so yeah, I would agree with the people who were telling you, don't worry about it, which it sounds like you've already moved on from that anyway. So that's awesome. And we're moving forward, and people do understand when you actually have like a good reason for what happened. So
Yeah.
let's see. Larry Lonsby says Scott's Zot was amazing, which yeah, that I would like to read it. It's just one I haven't quite gotten to yet. Daniel says doing okay, just updated my 100 days on Instagram. Awesome, dude. I use cheap paper and medium price watercolor. That's pretty much what I've used. And, I mean, you can get a decent enough work out of it. It's just there's certain techniques that are tougher to do, that I wanted to do, with watercolors, that I found were really hard to do with cheaper stuff. But yeah, you can't. I mean, trust me, I've done a lot with just exactly what you've said. And I think no matter what quality product you use, I just talked about this in my video yesterday. You can make comics with crayons and pencils, if you want, or ballpoint pens. If you have, it really doesn't matter the medium. A good artist can make anything work. So yeah, I don't know. Let's see, Samir Rizvi. Hopefully I said that right. How you doing, man? Glad to have you over here. Has there been people in Comics Gate running away with money? I am new to comics. These indie comics are my first comics. Yeah, I do actually wonder, Tim, are you referring to like some things that have happened recently? If you're still here, I'd love to hear. Oh, actually, it looks like he might have actually answered. He said, yeah, I think you only get one shot to get it right with crowdfunding. Okay. So he was kind of adding to the conversation. I think that's a good point. I am curious, is there like some specific things that have happened recently that's caused kind of that comment? And also, I do agree. Like your first time out the gate with crowdfunding, you got to make sure you deliver on that one,
Yeah,
especially.
yeah,
I mean, you really have to deliver on all of them, but that's like your proving ground. You do your first one, and you got to make sure you deliver, and then from there on out, people. Because I've said this before, your branding isn't like the logo you make and the backgrounds and all the things like that people say branding is. Branding is your reputation. It's
Yeah.
are you somebody who actually does the work and actually talks the talk and delivers on things? That's what your real branding is. If
yeah.
you don't have all that snazzy stuff, but you deliver, like you're golden.
Spot on.
Yeah. Crowdfunding it's sort of a public business.
Mm,
It's like there's plenty of people putting out comics, but anybody who throws up, their latest issue on Comixology isn't as public as somebody who's doing a crowdfunder.
mm,
No,
And, it's like businesses are created and destroyed by you producing or not producing. However you do it, through crowdfunding or just throwing it up in the store or doing it just at comic stores, however you deliver, doesn't matter. Um, if you don't deliver, then you risk the chance of not continuing.
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
you both absolutely, you nailed it. It's about delivery, and about quality delivery, and on the way there, communicating with the people that are supporting you by providing you with money to produce the product that they want to get. It's from what I can tell, I haven't heard any so far. I haven't heard any horror stories from the dreaded Comicsgate side, as far as people running away with money are concerned. But then my ear isn't particularly close to the ground. It's just just what you hear. I think there's a lot of people screaming at Ethan Van Sciver because he's taken a while to do his book. But I think some of these, like we were saying earlier, it's like when you communicate, as long as you're communicating and people are happy that they're going to get their product in the end, then I don't see it as a great problem. I got Doug TeNaples' book, not Earthworm Jim, the other one, Bigfoot Bill, and he came in on time on that, and that's a fabulous book, and I'll be buying the Earthworm Jim book as well because I enjoyed Earthworm Jim back in the 90s when it was a video game, and it's a great property, so I'll be picking that up. But I regularly scour, Indiegogo and Kickstarter to see what's out there and see what grabs my attention. You can't buy them all, but I like to go in with separate the art and the artist, go in with an open mind and not go to somebody's video channel, YouTube channel or blog or Twitter first, to just go in and see what's in there and see if I like the book or not. And then I'll pick the book up depending on whether I like the book, not on whether I like the person or not. But you're absolutely right. As far as brand is concerned, Marshall, getting that book done and out and keeping your customer base happy, that's your brand without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering if Ethan's gotten his book out or not. I don't like you said, I don't really follow that stuff very closely, but
well, the only reason I know about Ethan's is because I bought the book. I like Ethan's art. I mean, I don't, I can't profess to be in agreement with his politics or the way that he handles himself. I would choose to handle myself in a different way, and like I said, I don't like talking politics anyway. I just don't think it's I don't think it's relevant, to be honest, to the work. So I'm not going to sit here and slag him off for whatever he does or doesn't do. I'd get pretty annoyed if I thought that the book wasn't on its way, but he does put up regular updates, and it seems that I think it's in print at the moment. So I've waited for other books online where people have said, "Oh, it's sorry about this. The update is the book will be a month late or whatever, and as long as it turns up, you don't mind.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I completely neutral. I like Ethan Van Sciver's work. I came to his work only a couple of years ago, really, and it's some beautiful work. It reminds me of somewhere in between sort of the 90s work and Bronze Age work. It's got a lot of detail in it. The figure drawing's really good. It's dynamic. So, you know, I thought, well, that looks good. I'm going to pick it up. I'm certainly not going to be put off by a bunch of people on Twitter shouting that you shouldn't buy a book because they don't like him. You know, so it's go out there, buy the books that you like, and enjoy them, and leave everybody else to enjoy their books.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I've seen a million movies, and it's like I don't go looking into actors and actresses and directors' personal lives before I go see a movie. It's like, you know, there's all this commotion and talk, and it's like, I don't care.
No, I agree.
Give me a good book.
Yeah, give me a good book, good movie, whatever. Yeah, just no. So it's a load of old tripe. Some people like to have a lot of drama in their lives. I'm not keen on the drama. I just you know, have an easy life, for Christ's sake. Make your life as easy as you possibly can. We don't live in caves anymore, and we don't have to hunt our food.
Yeah.
So make the rest of your life easy.
The only thing I'm critical with is like girlfriends. It's like, you know, it's like, you know, we have to agree on some things, you know. But other than that, it's like, you know, I'm open.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you know, I don't really love the idea of Scientology or anything, but I mean, I love watching stuff like Top Gun and Mission Impossible and stuff. So
Exactly. I mean, that Scientology is batshit crazy. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that out loud. but it doesn't stop me watching Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise stops me watching Tom Cruise. But yeah, I mean, the last film I saw him in was not The Day After Tomorrow, whatever it is, the time travel one with the alien invasion.
Oblivion?
I can't remember. No, he kept on reliving the same day again.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I forget the name of that.
Can't remember it. I thought that was quite a good film, and it was it really appealed to shallow me, so I like that.
Shallow Russ.
Shallow Russ. That's me. I like shallow. I
want to come up with like a different term than shallow, because I don't really think it's shallow. You know what I mean? Like, I get what you mean, but like, there's nothing wrong with enjoying a movie for what it is.
Popcorn Russ. How's that? Popcorn Russ.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah. Popcorn Russ. Happy Dog Russ. Oh, look, there's a car. Chase it. Oh, something shiny. Squirrel. Yeah.
So James says, nah, plenty of projects learn from the early mistakes and come back with successful second or third tries. Good point. That's a good point. I mean, it is possible to rebound. I mean, there is, you know, the idea of second chances. I mean, I'm all for second chances. You know, if people are honest with you and they're not like, you know, trying to just take advantage of you over and over, I mean, you know, give them a second chance. If they take advantage of you again, then okay, now it's probably time not to just ignore them. But, you know, I don't know. If you really like their stuff, it might be worth giving them a second chance, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's along the lines of what Russ was talking about earlier, like seeing, and you as well, seeing the world through, you know, like everything is black and white. You know, people make mistakes. Stuff happens. You can't be, you know, on one side or the other. It's like, you know, you'll your brain will pop at some point in your life. You know, it's like you just gotta be a bit casual about things and not so hardcore this or that. it's like I want to live in a world where people get together, and get along, and
Yeah.
and it's not, just a war every 3 years.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's see what else. Tim says, I'm saying for me, if you do not follow through, I probably will never back you again. Not saying you can never have a successful one. Yeah, and that's of course a personal choice, and I totally, you're free to not give a second chance. It's really up to you, and everybody's different. But again, like he's still saying, you can still have a successful career after that. It just, I'm not going to be participating in it. And, I totally get that.
Yeah.
And Tim says, I had heard they had been problems, nothing specific. No. Yeah. So he's just talking about, possible bad Kickstarters. And speaking about Ethan, I'm kind of reminded of that situation. The thing is, I don't know. Ethan is very well known to be a hard worker who gets his work done, in mainstream. And this is his first time doing indie comics. This is his first. Well, it's not his first time doing indie comics, but it's his first time kind of doing everything himself. And that's something that's kind of tough to do. And I'm sure everybody's all up in arms about the fact he hasn't gotten his thing out, but that's probably motivated from other things too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Personally, I feel like unless he does the thing that Peter was describing and kind of disappearing from the internet, which I very much doubt he would ever do. I think he's good for it. Personally, I think he's good for it.
I can't think he would ever want to disappear. He likes the sound of his own voice, does Ethan? And I say that in the nicest way. He's a bit of a showman, isn't he? Whatever you think of him, whether you like him, whether you don't, you got to admit he's a bit of a showman. But I think you're right. As long as you come up with the goodies, people will back you if they like what you're doing. Whereas there's no guarantee they're going to like what you're doing. They might get your book and go, "Oh no." It's always a possibility, but chances are, as long as you pull the stops out, get them what they want.
Yeah, and you mentioned Doug TenNapel. Like the difference between Ethan Van Sciver and Doug TenNapel is black and white essentially. Like Doug can churn out a book in a month, no problem, no sweat. He's done plenty, and Ethan is his pages are so insane, and stuff I've seen from the book itself looks gorgeous.
Yeah,
So regardless of what you think of him, it's like he pours everything into everything he does. So
yeah, well, that's why I think it's important to separate art from artists so that you can enjoy everything that's out there and stop worrying about what they think when they're not drawing a comic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Doug too, to your point, is this isn't his first crowdfunding. He's done he's like a champion of crowdfunding. Like he's not only is he crowdfunding, but he's making video games and going on to his next project, and like he's like mastered this. So there's a big difference between the two when it comes to that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, he's a veteran of this kind of work. Yeah.
So James says, yeah, I wasn't talking about not producing what was promised that shouldn't be forgotten or repeated. I meant just people that got a rough start. Yeah, no problem there. I think we got what you meant, but no, you're not misdirecting us. We're cool with tangents and stuff. And to me, honestly, what we're talking about here is still kind of on topic, because to me, the topic of today is the legacy of comics, and this is the legacy of comic creators. Even in the present. And I think I'm actually a guy who, when I hear people talking about leaving a legacy, I kind of cringe at it, because I'm like, who cares? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't sit here and think about what legacy am I going to leave. I don't really care about that. I just want to make cool stuff. Like I'm just gonna do the best at what I'm doing right now, and if it leaves a legacy, cool, I guess. But I'm not. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to have some kind of prestige at the end of the day. I'm doing it because I want to make cool things that people like. You know.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
definitely.
I look at it because like I've had years and years and years in my career where I've worked on books that, you know, if I had a list and went through them, you might have heard of one or two. You know, uh, so to me, it's like a lot of what I've done is, you know, kept myself going in this career, which
Mm,
I could wake up and be happy with, but I do want to do something that, you know, whether you call it leave a legacy or, you know, I want to do a book that for me is something I want to leave behind and be remembered by. You
mm.
know,
It's not to disparage people who
yeah,
do care about that. You know, and to be honest, I probably do on some level because what you're describing right there reminds me of my kind of desire. I have a very strong desire and motivation to kind of prove myself. I don't know who I'm proving myself to. I think I'm just want to prove myself to myself.
yeah,
But I know I can create things that are really cool that hit the points I want to hit, and I haven't gotten there yet, and I feel like I'm on a quest to get to that point where I'm proving exactly what I know the potential is, you know.
I
most definitely.
I think there's a certain amount of um, what's the word for it? It's kind of like you're kind of underpinning what you do in your life. So for me, what was important about drawing comics, or part of what was important about drawing comics, that was that people would buy those comics. Now that comes out as a profession. It comes out as a way to earn money. So if you're, for me personally, part of my journey was to say, not only do I draw comics, but somebody wants to pay me for my product, which means they think it's worthy. So it's not just me looking at it and seeing my personal journey with my work, but other people actually appreciating it and wanting to spend their time, which is effectively money, their time on my work, and feel that it is in some way of value to them, if only for a small portion of entertainment. And that's a big part of what I do, is to actually see, is to interact with as many people as I possibly can via the medium of my work.
Yeah.
I've not done a crowd fund yet. I've only been able to do graphic novels where I've done work for other people, and so been involved in the team, which is great. But the idea of doing that kind of that crowdfund thing, and actually have a complete vision produced, that you've written and produced the art for and everything, and then taken to the finish and had it printed and delivered, and think that not only do people want it, but you may have even been successful enough to grow an audience. That's quite important to me. I don't know about leaving it for posterity, for people once I'm dead, but certainly while I'm alive and working, it's important that people want to see your stuff and enjoy it and appreciate it, rather than you just being a vacuum on your own.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's I think the you know, the whole branding thing, that's there's a lot to it. I mean, I guess there's a lot of different ways to kind of to view it and stuff. And you know, the point is, you know, practically, professionally, of course you want to have a good reputation, and you want, you know, to build something that people enjoy and respect. So there's that kind of practical stuff of it, but there's like a certain, you know, probably I don't know, self-actualization type of thing, or I don't really know the best term for it, but there's definitely a part of it that just on an almost in an emotional level, you know, I know for me, like I want to hit certain points, and you know, it's like you want you want to have a party and you don't want to be the only one there, basically.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, and you want people to want to
Yep.
be there. Yeah.
You know, I look back at all my favorite books that I picked up throughout the years that I remember just like being so excited when I got the latest issue. Like when Hellboy, the first issue of Hellboy came out, you know, I was like, yes, I've been waiting for this. It seems like forever, and it looks awesome and it's amazing. Um, when John Byrne was doing X-Men, it was like so excited. It was like, yes, it's another chapter in the saga that they've just been building and building on. Teen Titans by George Perez, it's like, and I could just go on and on and on. And a lot of independent titles as well. It's like, as well as mainstream, and that's what I want people to feel when they pick up one of my books, not just like, oh, it's another one for the stack. No, I want it to be a little special.
Yeah, I agree. You want someone to pick it up and feel the same way about it that you and I felt about those books that you just mentioned, or our favorite comic books, or the way that, for instance, I evangelize about John Buscema. It would be lovely to think that somebody would pick my book up. And don't get me wrong, I don't have delusions of grandeur here. John Buscema was a genius. But maybe pick my book up and go, oh, wow, that's really, really good. And it might even inspire them to want to do the same thing. I mean, that carrying that thing on, like Marsh was saying earlier, sort of carrying on a tradition almost.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a cool thing too, is like it's like you want to be like you want to contribute, to not only just like, make some kind of Pulp Fiction that somebody reads and throws away later, nobody wants to do that, but you want to contribute, and there is something about like contributing to the actual craft and just what comic books are like. And it's interesting because we were talking about like, who would be the Mount Rushmore of comics, and it's like a lot of people have contributed a lot of things, but it's interesting to sit there and try to actually evaluate like what is it that they've brought to it. And when you've come into comics and it was one way, did you leave it better off? Did you leave it in a better place than it was?
Nice way to think it. Yeah,
I certainly would like to be able to say that I have, I mean, there's certain things that I want to see in comics, and I hope I'm able to deliver those things that I haven't seen in comics before, and if I am able to do that, then, maybe I've left comics a little bit better than I found it, I don't know. I mean, that's a really lofty thing, and it's actually probably a pretty arrogant thing to kind of say that's what you're trying
I think
to
it's
do.
I think it's an admirable goal.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, like, it's not so much that I think comics are bad either. It's just there's certain things I want to see, and I don't, even if I'm not known for it, I'd be happy to have contributed to making comics, continue to be awesome. Really, it's really living. I mean, to be honest, if I could just live up to some of my heroes, that would be freaking great. Like, and I don't know that I can even do that,
Yeah, just having a fraction of their appeal or their impact on comics would be just good enough. You just to think that it's funny that those guys that we talk about, those people that maybe you'd put up on the Mount Rushmore, they often didn't think that they were necessarily contributing anything of great worth. They thought they were producing pulp. I mean, obviously, I'm sure Jack Kirby loved his creations, and I'm sure Stan Lee did as well, and that they felt that they were producing quality, but it was still quality that was like in this month, and the story continued to next month. The idea that these books would become revered as great stories probably wasn't in their minds. They were kind of getting the next issue out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah, well,
interesting, and it's funny
when
too,
you
'cause- go ahead.
and it's when you really like it's one thing to put out first issue, a couple of issues, but to do a bunch of different books on a monthly basis like they were,
Mm.
and for how much gold were that was sprinkled throughout all the books, is an amazing, you know, thing to like like us reaching for something like that.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's like at the end of the day, I want to do a good job every day.
Mm.
Mm,
And that's always on my mind. But to aspire for something greater, to me, is just my way of pushing me beyond the level where I am at today.
yeah,
Yep, that's a
yeah.
good
It's
way
like
of
that
doing it.
whole thing. Shoot for the stars, and if you only get to the moon, well, you got to the freaking moon. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't know. There's just so much to it, and I think it is important. Like I did say, kind of the whole thing about like I'm not looking to create a legacy necessarily, but that's the thing too. Is like you know, so there have been people who have approached writing novels, thinking I want to write the next great American novel or something like that. And the people who made what are considered to be the great American novels weren't trying to make the great American novel. They were just trying to make their story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fans are the ones who deem it, certain in a certain revered way. So it's like you don't really have control over it anyways. But just to
Yeah,
be able to play in the same playground as the greats have is an honor.
Yep.
yeah. So many factors into what is a masterpiece, and a lot of it's just accidental. It's timing. It's trends. It's whatever.
Yeah.
It's the right person saying something about your work at the right time.
Yeah. All we can really do is work hard and hopefully make some cool things, and history will figure itself out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I think that this has been a great discussion, and let's just check in with the chat one last time, see if there's anything new. But I think we rounded around to some pretty cool things. Um, Tim is saying, I think I make art so when I die, I will somehow be remembered not to be famous. It might just be one or two people. That's a great point too. It's like you kind of create. A lot of people create with the motivation of just having their kids be able to read it. Eventually, or
Mm.
you know, so that there's nothing wrong with that too. I kind of like that as a point, and it's funny. Like even like Tolkien, like his stories, a lot of his stuff he wrote was kind of just stories for his kids. And then he also had like this big story he was writing, but he wasn't even caring about publishing it too much. It wasn't until his buddy C.S. Lewis like really instigated him to like, hey, this stuff is amazing. Publish it, publish it, publish it, publish it. Like he had to like kick him in the pants so many times. And he finally did publish it, and now we have Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So, there's definitely something to that. Make your work for yourself and make it for maybe a few people that you love or something. And that's good enough. And who knows, maybe it'll become something. James says, I just want to leave a good story for my kids to cherish. If anyone else likes it, that's just bonus points. See, there you go. Exactly. Larry says, James, I agree. For me, it's about being a storyteller. Just want to tell fun and awesome stories that people will enjoy. So I think we're thinking on the same wavelengths here, guys.
I think it's perfect for Father's Day, especially that a lot of us want to leave stories to the next generation, to our kids, to.
Mm, absolutely. That's really cool. So, on that note, happy Father's Day once again to everybody. Peter, where can we find you?
On YouTube, just Peter Palmiotti. I'm sure the link's below. Go subscribe and check out my videos. I'll have another one up shortly.
All right. And Russ, Mr. Comic Book Black Belt himself, where can people find you?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, YouTube, Comic Book Black Belt, or you can pick me up in the usual places, Twitter, Facebook, all those kind of things. I just put up a video about my color work on Ben 10, and I'll have another Draw the Marvel Way. I think it's the Man Thing versus the Hulk. Finish off that. Oh no, it wasn't that one. It's Thor versus the Destroyer. I guess the finish of that piece will be up soon.
Cool. Awesome. And like I said, I'll put a link in the description for that video I made about the Mount Rushmore of comics. It was another fun discussion and stuff.
Yeah,
so
that'd be cool.
do
I'll
that.
go watch that.
And then you guys know where you can find me, donkeyjawprojects.com, on Instagram, MarshallLee_DJP, same on Twitter. And that'll be it, guys. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us in the chat. And thank you guys for coming on with me, Russ and Peter. And we'll talk to you guys on the next one.
See ya.
Later.